I must ask you a question, but I'm shaving it for later. Do you feel lucky, punk? Oh, behave. Okay. I suck at voices, but my guest today does not. I have to tell you, though, before you become ex-listeners, that I messed up. Like, a lot. I have to tell you, there's random spots of reverb. Maybe it was genius. Maybe I was just dumb. You decide. But there is a video that goes along with this that will be on YouTube. Just look up Good Boy 123 and you will find it. And our guest uses awesome visual guides for his presentation. I don't know what else to call it. But first, take a look at today's lucky winner.
Congratulations! You're today's lucky winner. You're dead, but you've won a year back on Earth to do whatever you want. And I'll be your Grim Reaper chaperone.
Rita, why are you at my desk?
I'm talking to a lucky winner.
They aren't dead. I was going to tell them about the show.
The show where I helped my dead human friend Dawn prove that she was murdered?
Yeah.
The paranormal stoner comedy.
Yes, the scripted fiction show that's got fart jokes, sapphic romance, vampires, and acid trips.
Where would they find today's lucky winner?
On their favorite podcatcher app. Now get the out of my desk.
That's today's lucky winner. They're very funny. I highly suggest you guys go check them out. But without further ado, meet Joel Gibbs. Welcome. Behind the behind. Welcome. What's your story? Behind the behind. You're a hero. Welcome. Where are we going? Behind the what? Behind the behind. Oh, hey guys, thank you guys for coming back to another episode of Behind the Behind. I am joined by an all-star today. This is the man of 1,000 voices, or 900 some odd, but marketing counts. And Joel, could you please just give yourself a red carpet intro?
Let's see. Do you need a drum roll or something to go with this? There we go. That's fine. I am I'm a multifaceted kind of guy in this business. What I'm known quite a bit for across the country are all these celebrity cartoon and character voices I've done in well over 40,000 projects over the years, radio,
Wow.
television, animation, film. See, already this thing is going, my intro is going on too long here.
No, not at all.
But yeah, man of 1,000 voices is a kind of a comfortable way of describing it. Although I always say more like 783, but right. Marketing is everything. Doesn't sound very sexy to say the man of 783 voices. If it's that many.
I love it, man. I actually have a lot of listeners, about 6, that most of them actually want to get involved in voiceover work.
Oh.
So when you reached out to me, I was super excited because as a kid, I always watched a lot of cartoons and a lot of Saban entertainment stuff where most of that was voiceovers from the original Japanese show. And the big question I'm sure they all have that I have is, how did you even get started?
Well, I started out as a child, and that's an old reference to a goofy joke. No, but it's actually legitimately the truth. I'm a child of the 50s, and when I was a very little boy, 4 or 5 years old, there was I don't know if you'll know this name, but there was an extremely, hugely famous ventriloquist in the dawn of a 50s television. His name was Paul Winchell. And for some reason, I can't explain it, I was maybe 4 years old, but I was drawn into what he was doing like a tractor beam. It just kind of sucked me in. I don't have any recollection as to why. All I knew was, wow, this is cool. And I love that. What do they call that? A dummy? Ooh, he's cool. I like him. And within the course of a year, often, sitting in front of a mirror and practicing my alphabet and words and whatever. By the time I was 5, 6, something like that, I was a pretty accomplished ventriloquist. just by watching him. They didn't have VCRs and YouTube and all that, but watching and using a mirror, I started collecting hand puppets and dummies and this and that. And of course, I, in my insane imagination, would assign a personality or a voice to each one of these figures, puppets, what have you. And unintentionally, I started developing my vocal skills and found by the time I was, like in public school and elementary school, I had an ear for being able to emulate other people's voices, whether it was my friends or the teachers or whatever the case may be. So every time I told a story or a joke, it was always in some dramatic fashion. It was in voices. And then, yeah, you just keep graduating. You get into junior high and you become class clown. And by the time you're in high school, it's like, wait a minute, there's actually a couple famous voices I can do. And the next thing you know, I'm spending my entire life turning all my avocations into one big vocation.
That's awesome, man. You you found a way to play and make that a job. And I think that that's the dream that a lot of people are chasing. And I think it's an important dream to have as well.
Yeah, it I don't know that I realized it was a dream until maybe I got into high school and realized, you know what, entertainment, I'm digging this, and this is what seems to come natural to me, and I know, and I'm learning more and more and more about it. My mother had other ideas, but here I am today, and made a pretty solid career out of doing this, amongst many other things in the entertainment business. But that's something I'm particularly known for.
I think saying a pretty solid career is modest. You are a staple in the voiceover industry, man. When I just briefly mentioned you, I already had a few friends who were like, "What? No way!" And I got excited through their excitement, and it just warms my heart, man, because you reach out, and I think that you have a great story to tell, and not just like your interactions with celebrities or anything, but just your story, period, which is very important to me. That's what this whole podcast is about. It's about getting behind. It's about getting further into what you are as a person. But I actually have a question. It's a personal question. How great were your prank calls?
Well, yeah, the one prank call that I most remember, which is interesting because about 30, 40 years later, I performed the same prank call as an adult to somebody. Well, I'll explain. I am the self-proclaimed, some people might argue with me, but the self-proclaimed most mentally ill, passionate Beatlemaniac that ever walked the face of the earth. They are deeply, deeply in my DNA. And when I was, I guess, about 12, I somehow managed, even whatever my vocal characteristics were then as a little kid, I managed to be able to do Paul McCartney's voice.
Oh.
So the prank was calling, at that time, girls were insane. They just went out of their minds. I mean, all that screaming that you see in the black and white footage, that was real. That wasn't just like, oh, young boys, they're so cute. The girls were out of their minds. And I knew of one particular girl that was sort of my counterpart, my female counterpart, and myself and a friend decided to prank her and call her. He was portraying, somehow he deepened his voice and started to do this whole AM disc jockey thing, that allegedly I'll call her Susan, you, Susan, have won a transatlantic call with the one and only Paul McCartney. And she goes completely out of her mind. We think this is very funny. Very, very funny. And then all of a sudden, I get on the phone and I start talking to her. Hello, Susan. This is Paul, all the way across from the Atlantic. and I don't remember the conversation, but we were crying, laughing because we had pranked her and eventually hung up on her. And that was the prank call. Like I say, fast forward decades later, I showed up in a buddy's office and he said, listen, I've got a friend in, it was some other state somewhere, another time zone, whatever. He owns a recording studio. He's a Beatle freak. Can you call him? And I'm like, wow, it's like deja vu all over again. Like I haven't done this since the 60s. So yeah. And I figured I'll just mess with him for a minute or two. But the call lasted probably a half hour because he was so, he believed it so deeply that he was talking to McCartney, and it was killing me. This time it was different. It was hurting me because I was like, oh, this poor guy. He so believes he's talking, and I'm going on and on about his equipment, and so I got the bass because it was symmetrical. It wasn't because it was a Hofner, and we're going on and all this stuff, and finally I had it. His buddy took the phone from me and had to tell him the truth. I'm sure he was heartbroken, but I was just as heartbroken pulling this on him.
That's, man, prank calls were, I was kind of a loner as a kid, and I thought that prank calls were the funniest thing to do by yourself because you don't need a whole crowd around you to do it.
Well,
But
yeah,
man,
you can. I've done a lot of prank calls where I wasn't particularly a specific celebrity, but I may have been a doctor with test results, or
oh yeah,
someone from
I've
the
done that
IR,
too.
just something to throw a scare into somebody and break character after about a minute once they
Yeah,
were sufficiently scared. Try not to make
I love it.
yeah.
That's so funny. So voiceover work itself has evolved as our society has, and it seems like you've adapted really well. What is an obstacle that you've had since starting this kind of a career and having to adapt to the current times?
Well, I've been very lucky. I thought years and years ago. I mean, I'm centered geographically here in Philadelphia, so it's a major city, and I assumed as a very young man, like, well, I'm not going to be the only guy in Philly that does this. I'm going to have competition. How could I be the only guy? And as it turned out, for decades, I largely carved out this niche here in my city, and a great deal in the Northeast corridor up here in the New York, New Jersey, Delaware, whatever. Because as it turned out, there weren't really many, if any, guys who did specifically what I did, or the variety of voices. Plus, I had my own recording studio. I wrote, produced all this stuff and whatever. So it turned out that I didn't have many mountains to overcome. I was very, very lucky. Today, the big difference is that, well, it's two differences. One is kind of good for me in that the digital world has allowed people to access. If you want what I do, you don't have a lot of choices, whether you good, bad, or indifferent. We let everybody else judge it. But I've been very lucky to carve out this area where I haven't had many obstacles to overcome at all. The adaptability that's interesting now in 2020, this glorious year, is that I find that there's fewer and fewer and fewer iconic voices that people actually recognize. So it's like starting to run out of the celebrity voices, not so much the cartoon voices and characters. Well, you need me to be a farm animal one moment and some old geezer the next moment. Well, that's just characters, so they never run out of style. But the upside is that there's so many more places to put them, in animation, in digital, in gaming. So I'm still attacked from every side. Well, I'll get a call from somebody in the UK that says we're doing a fantasy gaming thing, whatever it is, some Wizards of Behind the Behind, or whatever you want to call the game. And eventually, perhaps they need some old wizard or somebody that casts spells, and there's, or the bad guy, or whatever. So it's like sky's still the limit.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. It's funny when I ask people my age what they think of when they think of voiceover work, they think of anime, they think of Japanese animation, and it's while that's awesome, and I love that we're adapting other cultures. I also think like what you do is equally as important. And have you had to cross over into the Japanese world, the Japanese animation world at all?
I've done a few things for anime. People, what happens is around the world, people will put in a different search words, and inevitably they'll find me and or other people. And yeah, sometimes I'll get somebody will send me like these two sentences. Could you do this as an Asian warlord? Can you be a stupid teenager? Can you be this? Can you be, I mean, there's so many different roles to play, and more often than not, hey, listen, it's all in the ear of the beholder. If somebody hears what they're looking for, that's the person that gets the job. But I've been very fortunate to be able to have a range to go in a lot of different directions.
That's so awesome, man. I've only ever had to experience doing voiceover work one time. There was an ad campaign. I think it was Obama was running his second campaign for his second term, and this was an anti-Obama campaign. And it was they were trying to do Girls Gone Wild, but Obama Gone Wild. And the only thing I could think of is that guy that's like, Girls Gone Wild, and that's all. So I was just like, Obama Gone Wild, and that's all I had to say. That one time, they handed me $100, and I was like, cool, see it, that's great.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot. I've done a lot of older presidents or past presidents, but the fact is, there's nothing worse. Well, there's a lot of things worse, but one of the really rotten things is a bad impression. There's nothing like you hear a radio or TV commercial or something, someone desperately trying to do an impression, and it's awful. So I decided, okay, I'll be the judge of what I think I can pull off, and never ever do what I can't pull off. So I've been lucky to be objective about that. So I was never able to hear W's voice in my head, nor Obama's, nor the current outgoing, interesting gentleman. So the last president I did, and it was a lucrative one, was Clinton, because once he, well, he started with that good old boy thing, but once he got in trouble with the blue dress, I was frankly inundated with requests to do that all day long, and it was just coming at me from left and right because he was a subject of parody. But the last few guys, it just wasn't getting in my ear.
I cannot get Obama's voice out of my head. The his cadence is just so good. My fellow American, what we're gonna do, and it's so imitate. Like I feel like it's one of the easier ones. I'm sure you could probably nail it if you really just sat down there.
The funny thing was, for whatever reason, there wasn't a market.
Yeah,
I'm sure there would have been a market for the man who recently has held office, but
he must
I
not be
wasn't
named.
I wasn't interested personally in fostering that. Let's put
Yeah,
it that way. So we just let him go and stuck to the tried and true gang.
that's awesome. You're holding what you hold true, And I think that's a big lesson for a lot of people is don't try to be someone you're not.
Yeah, well, that's as a person, but you got to be objective and subjective. It's hard to be objective about your own abilities and your talent. It's kind of better to hold it up to other people and let them judge, and then you're being more honest, with yourself about what you can offer one way or the other. But I had is enough nonsense been rolling around in my brain that kept me cool. Kept me cool.
So out of all of your voices, do you have a favorite?
Um, I guess I'd have to default to The Godfather, to Don Corleone. It's my favorite film of all time. Recently, I have had the good fortune to meet some people in very high echelon roles in that film. I kind of got lucky on that, but that was waiting a lifetime for that. But I would say I've had more requests to do The Godfather than probably anything else. And because it's my favorite film and I've watched it, I don't know, 80, 90,000 times, it just fits like a glove. I've gotten to the point where I can turn the volume off and do karaoke to the entire film. So
Wow. That's really cool.
yeah,
I
it's sick, is what it is.
No way, man. This is a nerd podcast for nerds. That's that's so cool. And I do enjoy The Godfather. I'm not gonna lie, when I was a kid, I thought they were very boring. But as I became an adult and started and kind of watched it as a story, it's Star Wars. It's Star Wars in another media. Or rather, Star Wars is Godfather in another media. It's family drama. It's
It's
insane things.
many people have called it Shakespearean, King Lear-ish, but that was Coppola's intention. But I can remember just as in the film, there's a moment when Michael gets to Sicily and he sees Apollonia for the first time, and his bodyguard in Italian says, "It looks like you got hit by the thunderbolt." Well, I've been hit by the thunderbolt in my life on 3 or 4 or 5 occasions really hard. And one of them was that first time seeing The Godfather, without question.
Yeah,
Very,
that's so
very
cool.
vivid in my mind.
That's so awesome. So besides voiceover work, one audio professional to another, what other medias have you been part of?
Well, I've produced probably 35, 40,000 radio commercials. So in my recording studio, I've been the writer, producer, recording engineer, and voices for tens of thousands of projects. I've also done the same for television too. So I produced quite a number of television commercials and other TV, video, film projects over the year. No official motion pictures or whatever, but explainer videos and mini documentaries and some children's programming and things like that too. Some of those projects where I've actually gotten to use a few of the puppets and dummies, which came in handy. So I've done that, and for many years as a guy who has a monstrous amount of absurd, arcane minutia jammed in my head. I don't know if the word is film historian, but I am. I've done dozens of radio talk shows as a host, syndicated nationally, where my wealth and well of stupid factoids and knowledge have served as the basis for what I prefer to do on talk radio, which is have great conversations
Yeah,
with people. So between movies, television, music, and a lot of the entertainment industry, I've brought that forth in broadcast in radio shows for the past 25-ish years, I guess, or so.
that's so cool. Man, I'm super happy to have gotten the chance to talk to you. This is I okay. This next question might be a little weird. You mentioned the Godfathers is something you kind of nerd out over, and the Beatles as well. What is there another thing that is just like holds hard and true in your heart as a nerd?
Yes, yeah, there are four things that I'm obsessed with. They kind of switch orders depending on the moment, but in addition to the Beatles and the Godfather, I'm also well, I would say an expert on the James Bond films, but my true love is the Sean Connery films.
Yes.
Everybody else is fine, and has their moments, but I'm more of a Sean Connery freak. And the fourth, which perhaps you and your listeners may or may not have been exposed to, is the classic sitcom The Honeymooners with Jackie Gleason and Art Carney. And we're talking about what is known as the classic 39. The classic 39 episodes. That sitcom um, is for me is timeless. I know every word, every frame, every cut of every one of those 39 episodes, and they still make me fall out of the chair laughing. So that's it. Beatles, Godfather, Connery Bond films, and the Honeymooners. Uh, many other interests, but those are the big four.
Okay, so back to Bond, real quick. If you could rate your Bonds, the actors who played Bond in order, I'm 100% sure you're gonna put Sean Connery at the top, but how would you rate them now?
The Bonds themselves. Well, let's let's take a look at the Bond.
That's awesome.
Well, Connery obviously number one.
Hmm.
Um, I would have to put. This may sound. I have to put Daniel Craig largely as number two, with Pierce Brosnan a little bit behind him. I say Craig only because for me he and the filmmakers reinvented. I think they reinvented the genre more drastically than they did with any of the other Bonds. They made him cold and hard and dangerous again. And that's why I really particularly like those Bond films. Although I could watch Quantum of Solace 1,000 times and still not understand what the hell
Is going on.
I do think that Pierce Brosnan was more of a classic Connery type of Bond. Although, again, what I loved about Sean Connery is you all like Craig is even though he had these quips and the little humor in the Bond films, you always knew he was dangerous. He was absolutely dangerous, understated, what have you. I do have an appreciation for the one film that George Lazenby did, and I thought he did a reasonably decent, good job of it. But that's a whole other long story about why Lazenby didn't go on. I happened to the only Bond that I actually spent some time with was Timothy Dalton, so I can say that I met and worked with a James Bond. And of course, that means the bottom of the list is Roger Moore. And I don't know if that's because he was not an interesting Bond so much as they took the Bond series with him into spectacularly stupid and goofy areas. James, what Star Wars is popular now? Let's put James Bond in outer space
Yeah,
in Moonraker, and it was like, please, just save the outer space for Blofeld's rockets. So that's my that would be my ranking.
I think we're lined up like exactly. Because for a long time it was Sean Connery and Pierce Brosnan. Only because when I was a kid I thought they were the same guy, and he just looked that young still. He had the hairy chest and everything.
The whole deal. What did Sean
And
Connery do?
yeah.
Bird never make nest in empty, or bird never make home in empty nest. So
But you're right. Daniel Craig and that crew breathed new life, into the series. And man, it's just such I almost can't even put those Bond movies with the others, except for the fact that they stuck to like that same opening theme. There's a Bond girl. There's the bad guy who talks too much, you know. And I thought they did such a good job at emulating, but also reinventing, and that's why Daniel Craig he film wise, Daniel Craig has just wrecked wherever he's gone, and I can't wait to see more from him.
I can't wait to see the newest Bond film already, which was supposed to be out almost a year ago. So we're getting there. We're getting closer.
We're getting closer, but man, Sean Connery, if there was one person I wanted to be like, that was the man.
That hit me hard a couple months ago. That was sort of similar to the day we lost John Lennon, and for me, and the day we lost George Harrison. But waking up that morning and seeing that on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it was, I needed a moment to myself, and it also occurred to me that with all the notable people I've met, and I've met some very notable people, my chance at meeting Sir Sean was now over. So he was somebody I had always hoped to meet. Got close to McCartney a few years ago. Got very close, and then there were some distractions after having been with John Lennon back in '72, which was an out-of-body experience for me anyway. So
Yeah, mine was Michael Jackson. I was that was his funeral was actually on my 18th birthday, so that was a rough day for me. I've always been an admirer of him. Not really want to say worshiper, but I just thought the way he approached music and the way he produced music on top of the stuff that he recorded himself was amazing. And the world, I don't think, was ready for it at the time, because he changed the way we listen. He the with how singles are distributed and how LPs are distributed. He changed it. And my whole goal in life, after figuring out what I wanted to do in college, was to have him listen to some of my music and maybe get him to produce it if he was kind enough to offer me that. And when he left, I was the same. I needed some time, and it was rough. But I think that they lived good lives, and I hope that they know that they're remembered wherever they are out in the universe.
that's the important thing, if they're not here, instead it slowly but surely, it's like this morning I was watching a news program, and at this time of year, they in memoriam, and they show you everybody that's gone, and just this year alone, and who they did show, because it's not everybody. You just go, God, we lost that one and that one and that one. But that's the beauty of their work. It lives on.
It lives on through the people they've inspired to do what they do. And I think that's such a beautiful thing as well. When the time comes that Joe Rogan has to leave us, I hope that he can find solace in that he inspired me to do something, productive, kind of like how he did.
Inspirations are incredibly important. I mean, I've had so many inspirations in my life who have absolutely affected me directly. Talking about back to Paul Winchell, the ventriloquist, I often refer to him as the seed of my existence, because there's so much off of my obsession and fascination with him as a very little boy that grew out. Like everything I am, everything I've done, certainly professionally, has really been an outgrowth of being inspired by this one guy, and then more to come, as they went. But he was it for me. Al, if you're not, it just occurred to me, we were talking about him earlier. If you're not familiar with his name, once his whole TV career and whatever was kind of over, he turned to voiceovers, and he was the voice of Gargamel and of Tigger in all of the Winnie the Pooh stuff, and
What?
Hanna-Barbera characters, and Dick Dastardly, and on and on and on. Yeah, but Winchell had when he invited me to his home, he had a room just dedicated to his Grammys that he won for voicing Tigger.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is, the voice of Tigger that he did was an emulation of a comic that was inspirational to him as a boy, the voice that he created.
I've actually watched a documentary on the voice of Tigger. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. That's so cool. It comes full circle. But that's where anything is everything is inspired by someone else. And people will say that it's not original or whatever, but it is. That's where originality came from. Is we find something and we want to do it our own way, you know? And man, that's so beautiful. That's so cool. We need more beauty in the world. It's 2020. The world is gonna end. Hopefully not. And I'm just excited that we get to like experience these things and really just kind of open up the can of what makes us us. And that's again, like that's the point of the podcast is there's so many people out there with stories and just you may not know that you have a story that's going to inspire somebody, but I 100% am without a doubt you are going to inspire people. And I'm sure you have so many accomplishments that are going to push people to want to be better at what they do, and I'm just really excited that you're here telling your story. What is something that like for food. So I know that when I eat, I can't record like vocals when I would sing or record an album. When you're doing voiceovers, do you like fast or do you only eat certain things or
No, I pay absolutely no attention to that at all. I eat everything that is incredibly bad for me, so that makes me happy. Although as a guy who also was a lead singer in a classic rock band,
yes.
I learned from Keith Richards. Keith Richards had something he did. He said to keep his vocal cords all warmed up. So I would put this into practice only when I was playing with the band, and I didn't have any problem with it because the food was potato chips. Okay?
I I am all about it.
And for me, potato chips is the staff of life.
Yeah. Heaven better have potato chips. I've already told God this. Like, look, man, I got it. There's got to be some potato chips when I get there.
So apparently he claimed, Dr. Richards here, claimed that the vegetable oil in potato chips was a good lubricant for the throat. Well, okay, I'm there. And of course, he recommended washing it down with bourbon. So no arguments there. I was already a bourbon drinker. So as I sat at my drum kit, just before I'd count off the next song, it was munch munch, gulp gulp, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get into it. So yeah, but other than that, no, there was no officially prescribed food or drink for voiceovers.
That's awesome, man.
The trick is to try not to drink too much soda, so that if you're doing a live session, you do not expel gaseous.
Bert.
Yeah, it's not terribly cool. Non-carbonated drink for me right now.
All right. I have a 32-ounce water next to me at all times.
Water's the best thing.
Water's good. My wife and I recently started doing intermittent fasting, and the first week was the worst week of my life, because I love to eat. I'm a big chubby boy, and I love it. But we eat whatever we want when we do eat, and I've already lost 45 pounds, and I'm like, I'm sold. This is how I want to live for at least another 5 years.
Well, being in lockdown, I have not been able to enjoy all the things that I would prefer to eat. But I'm not starving either, and I'm also an intermittent eater. I eat, and then whatever time elapses before the next time I eat, that's the intermittent time. I'm hungry, and then I eat. It's probably different than yours. Probably a different regimen.
Yeah, I take a medicine in the morning that requires food, so I eat a breakfast, and then I skip lunch throughout the workday, which is great because then I don't have to take a lunch and I get to leave a little early. And then we eat dinner together. And she works at night, and then I come in here and do interviews, so it works out. It works out perfectly, and we get to eat together. That's my point. I love to eat with my wife because she's adorable when she finds a food that she really likes. She does that little happy dance.
Yeah, my wife and I don't necessarily agree on what to eat. I'm into salt, crisp, grease, popcorn, potato chips, cheesesteaks, et cetera, and she would prefer to eat lawn. Okay, if that's what you like, pass the hot dogs. Thank you very much. Okay.
So, as a Philadelphian, are you a cheesesteak fan?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, I also, if you'll forgive me, fancy myself a cheesesteak expert.
Oh.
Um, One, because I just do. Two, because my father actually owned an iconic restaurant in the 50s and 60s in the neighborhood that I grew up with. And he's the guy that actually brought the cheesesteak to those neighborhoods. There was nobody that had cheesesteaks then. So I became kind of a connoisseur. So when the next time you make it to Philadelphia, I'll make sure you avoid the tourist traps and get you properly fed, as long as you're not in an intermittent mode. You know.
Vacation doesn't count. Those calories don't count.
All bets are off during vacation. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. And because I'm very, very particular about what cheesesteak I'm eating, and because of the lockdown, I have not had a cheesesteak since January or February. It's been almost a year. Yes.
Oh, get this man a cheesesteak.
How how I'm making it through, I have no idea. But it's not just cheesesteaks I haven't had in a year. There's an awful lot of other places and food, but I'll survive. I'll be cool. I'll wait it out. I don't want to be sick and eating my last cheesesteak. So
Right.
we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. You gotta at least count, how many cheesesteaks you have left to eat in your lifetime, and you're nowhere near that. So
No, 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 no. I got plenty more cheesesteaks coming to me. That's for sure.
I love it. So back to your career. I This is really something that you could do until you're done working, until you decide to stop. So I know retirement isn't something that you probably think about, but do you have plans to retire? Do you plan to do something once you're done?
No, I'm having too much fun. I mean, still doing tons of voiceovers, involved in a couple projects on the back burner that are actually for television and puppetry too. Believe it or not, I have a feeling that if this project we're working on clicks and is bought, then I'll probably be able to say, "Look at what I did. I bookended my life. Started with the puppets when I was 4, and maybe I'll be 74 and still doing the puppets. That would be okay with me." Yeah,
Yeah.
at some point, I think my wife wants me to just stop talking. Uh, but until it stops bringing in the revenue, I think it's okay. She just excuses herself, and she's she's uh, she's been listening to me talk for a long time.
How long have you guys been married?
We in May will be 47 years. years,
That's awesome.
but we've been together for over 50 years.
Great.
We were just little baby teenagers when we first met, and that The Godfather hadn't even come out yet
Oh man.
when we met. Yeah, yeah. So, she's people have said to her on many, many occasions over the decades, "Your husband is so funny." To which she inevitably will say, "Yes, tears of laughter rolling down my cheeks 24/7. It's quite hilarious." So for her, I'm like I'm a Honeymooners rerun. She's seen it 1,000 times. I don't need to watch it again. Oh.
I can empathize with that. I have this I like to go on tangents whenever I'm explaining something simple, and I will come up with a story. That's one of my things. I can come up with a story on the spot and spin a tale, and my wife is like, "What are you trying to tell me?" And I'm like, "Oh, just that I took the trash out."
I'm exactly the same way. In fact, everybody that knows me through my life knows that I'm the king of the long story. However, may I point out, in my defense, that people seem to keep coming back for more. So it may be a long story, but I'm going to assume they're being entertained by the story
Exactly.
because they never stop asking. So, okay.
Yeah.
Happy to oblige.
I always tell her, I was like, "You're laughing, so clearly I'm doing something right." And the more that you're laughing, the more your eyes are closed and you don't actually have to see this, the more we're more likely to mesh well. Because she's so pretty. I have no idea how I got her. And I tell everybody it's because I made her laugh a lot in our beginning stages that her eyes were closed and she couldn't actually see what I looked like.
There was there on that note. um I've often heard it said that, first of all, I have a great respect for women, and because I'm a guy that likes to make people laugh, I've heard it said that women, uh unless they're perhaps shallow like men are or whatever, uh first, women want to be A, treated well, and B, they want to laugh. So if you're a guy that is interested in a woman and maybe you're not the George Clooney type, find a way to be genuinely funny and you just might have yourself some interest.
Yep. That's man, you nail it on the head. The one advice I can give you guys out there if you're listening is if you have trouble showing your appreciation, I know a lot of guys are stuck in that rut. Man, just open her car door for her. Once in a while, try to do it as often as you possibly can remember. And it she will bring it up now. We've only been married for about 3 years and a month. And we've only known before then we only knew each other for about 7 months, and we're a little older. I was 27, she was 26, and we kind of already knew exactly what who we were and what we could put up with and what we couldn't put up with. And we've already been through our toxic relationships. We're nearing the end of our 20s, and I wasn't literally looking for a wife and she wasn't necessarily looking for a husband, but it just clicked. And in my mind I was like, how do I make sure that this person wants to be around me the most? And I was like, I'm going to start opening the car door for her. And every single time I do it, she's always like, "Oh, thank you," and it's legit.
Yeah, I
'Cause
think
really
I
want
think
to.
it's kind of a shocking thing to a lot of the female species to see someone open a car door for them. It's an old style chivalrous thing, but it's nice. You're just being nice. You're being polite, and I still do it. I
Yeah.
still do it.
It's habit now, and even if my hands are full, I'll just like walk to her side of the car, and she's like, "What are you doing? Just go to your side. I got this." And I'm like, "Okay, sorry, sorry."
Yeah, part of that is, let the woman walk first before you, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I you know, women deserve to be respected a whole lot more than they usually are. And for the guys out there who are listening, and I say this affectionately, and I say it from the heart. Here's how to get what you want if you're a guy. Give the woman what she wants first. That is the trick. It's not trying to trick the woman. It's just women are smarter than men. It's just that simple. We're thinking always about The Godfather, our next meal, playing golf, drinking some bourbon, and doing something stupid. That is our job. Oh, and we can lift heavy things on occasion. Otherwise, we have no value whatsoever. And women are much smarter. They really are. But we're men and we're stupid and not paying attention. So it takes us a while to realize that, yeah, respect that woman. Let her have what she wants first. And if she gets it, you're going to get what you want second in line. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't mind standing second in line. I'm cool. But yeah, women, whether they're moms, sisters, aunts, girlfriends, wives, whatever, this would be a better world, I think, if women were running it. So, okay, how many votes did I get from the female listeners behind now? It's like I'm trolling for votes here.
No trolls, but just all votes. That's what we're getting right now. So I want to hit something. You were talking about how you have some celebrity stories. What is your favorite celebrity story?
Oh, I have no idea where to start. I've worked with and met so many, and this could end up being a 10-hour episode. But recently, I within the past few years, I hit the trifecta. As far as The Godfather was concerned, I spent about 45 minutes in a golf cart with James Caan about 5 years ago. Long story behind that, which I won't bore you with, but that was a fun meeting. I don't know if you can see this on Zoom, but that was kind of a fun thing. And all he wanted to do was run lines from the film with me, being Don Corleone. And I was embarrassed to do it with him. And I said to him, Mr. Caan, Jimmy, call me Jimmy. Okay, Jimmy, wouldn't I be kind of the jerk of the universe to just start doing a variety show for you here? He goes, yeah, but my friend Larry here says you're the king of the voices, and yada yada yada. So I gave him a couple moments of that, and then just about a year ago, right now, I'm a member of the Critics' Choice Association. I'll tell you a little bit more of this story. Excuse me. Every year, we have one of the only televised critics awards shows, beside the Oscars and the Golden Globes and whatever. And it is a gathering in California of the biggest of the biggest of the biggest AAA 5-star people from the movies and from television, all in one space on one night. I've been to a few of them, and I've had some conversations with some pretty interesting people. But this past January, before the Oscars, middle of January, we were out in Santa Monica, and this time, this was the year of The Irishman being nominated for many awards. Now, I was sitting at a table next to the cast of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So you had Kevin Pollak and Rachel Brosnahan and Maren Hinkle and Tony Shalhoub, and they were delightful. I'm not trying to name drop here, but 2 tables in front of me, up against the steps because, the biggest of the big are always, right out front. Mr. Keitel, Mr. Pacino, and Mr. De Niro are all sitting together at a table. And I decided, when in my life am I ever going to have a shot at meeting these gods? So because I'm a voting critic from the association, I decided that would be my in. Let me formulate what I'm going to say and be prepared to have my ass kicked to the back of the room by bodyguards or who knows what. So they went to commercial, and I made a beeline for the front of that table, and the three of them are sitting there. And I just opened they all sort of looked at me like, why is this guy standing there in front of us? And I basically said something to the effect of, excuse me, gentlemen, forgive me, you got to get your patter together and not go, because then you're finished. So I said to the three of them, gentlemen, excuse me for interrupting. My name is Joel. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm one of the voting critics. Now, they had just come back from winning the Ensemble Award for the cast, best cast. And the award is sitting on the table. And I said, I just wanted to say to the three of you, just take a moment to say how much you've inspired me, that your performances and your work have meant so much to me over the years. The three of you, I'm rambling like an idiot. The three of you, they're paying attention to me. They're looking square at me. The three of you are in my DNA. And then I don't know what made me do this. I went, I love you. As I said that, I felt like, that's the killer. You just killed it.
Suck it all back in.
Pacino rises up out of his chair and says, oh, we got to show this guy some love. And I'm petrified. And the woman sitting next to Pacino is holding up her phone to me and going, she's motioning me to come over as if to say, I will take your picture with these three gentlemen if you want. I've got 3 minutes to go here before they're back from commercial, and I got to get back to my seat. I go around the table to Keitel, and Keitel says, how do we work this? You want to sit on my lap? And I don't know what made me say it, but I said, well, Mr. Keitel, actually, I'm a ventriloquist. It would probably be more appropriate for you to sit on my lap. And he said, great, no problem. And he got up and I went, no, that's okay. And we posed, and this woman took our picture together. Then Pacino goes, don't forget about me. And I'm like, okay, try not to have a complete stroke. Just try, Joel. Try not to pass out, because Michael Corleone wants to take a picture with you. So he grabs me around my waist and gives me this bear hug. He goes, I told you I was going to show you some love. And I am starting to stroke out. It's starting to, I can feel all the arteries closing in my cerebellum. And he puts his arm, excuse me, around me. And the next thing you know, there we are together.
Oh, wow.
And then he plants a kiss. He plants a kiss on my left cheek, and I don't even know what to do. And at that point, he turns around and he says, Bobby, you're next. And I turn around to the guy who is well known for not saying a word to anybody, ever.
Yep.
De Niro says to me, so tell me where you're from. And my brain is going, Robert De Niro is proactively engaging in a conversation with me. And I said, well, as I said, Mr. De Niro, I'm from Philly. Bobby, I'm Bobby. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, you're a Bobby. Pacino then turns on my around and goes, are you going to take the picture or not? Give me the camera. And Pacino takes the picture of me and De Niro
Wow.
together. And I turned back to the three of them and said, guys, thank you all again. You've really made my day. So yeah, that was a special. Of course, about 10 minutes later, I took my son over to meet his idol, Mr. Tarantino, and that was a pretty crazy moment for him. So yeah, but having worked with Kevin Bacon and Billy Crystal and Tony Bennett and Julie Andrews and John Lithgow and John Legend and on and on and on, they've all, they all have their special moments and special stories.
That's so. Oh man, I want to revolve this podcast also around a community, and since you have a whole bunch of stories, I would love to have you back, uh, on again. I know that you are a wealth and a fountain of knowledge and information and awesome stories.
Useless, remember, useless knowledge and information.
But we will make use of it. We'll give it product.
Well,
But
if you want to do another episode in the future where I just tell all these goofy stories about those encounters, I'm your man.
I absolutely love it. So there's a thing I like to do at the end of each podcast. And I when I first started this podcast, it was going to be a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. And I was just going to talk to people who ran their own games. And then I was like, well, that's not the only thing I'm passionate about. I'm more my biggest thing is I love to talk to people. I love to converse, and I think I should open that up to more than just Dungeons and Dragons. But I will keep one aspect of that. And I'm going to send you a link on here on Zoom. So go ahead and click that for me.
Click that link. All right. I'm
And
clicking it. All right.
And it should bring you to some dice.
I see it.
So go ahead and click the blue dice and it'll make it disappear.
Okay. It disappeared.
And hover your mouse over the orange dice, but don't click it yet. So in Dungeons and Dragons, to do something amazing in the game, you have to roll a 20-sided dice. And that lets you know if you succeeded or did not succeed.
I see.
But we're going to roll against each other. And the scenario is,
yes,
I've kind of used this one before, but instead of a diplomatic approach, aliens have come to Earth and they want to speak to one of us. And the government is either going to call you or it's going to call me. And I hope that it's not me because I won the last one for the aliens, and I don't think that they want to talk to me again. So as the guest, please, sir, go ahead and hit that 20 for me.
just hit the 20.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Ooh, I'm right in the middle, I guess. Let's see what happens.
What'd you get?
I got a 10.
You got a 10. Okay. I've only won one of these rolls since I started this podcast, so you're probably gonna win. Yep, because I got a 4. So it looks like you are going to be the voice to the aliens. I will be your audio engineer. I will broadcast it for you. But right now, right now is your time to let people know how they can reach you, what kind of services you offer, and just basically how people can reach out and give you some kind of request or they have questions for you. This is your red carpet.
Sure. You can go to my website, which is voicesbyjoel.com, voicesbyjoel.com. And the email address is on there, but it is studio@voicesbyjoel.com. You go to the website, you can have some fun, listen to some of the goofy things that I've done, and send me a note if anybody out there has any sort of project that fits the insane things that I do. It would be my great pleasure to help you out, hold your hand, and bring it to fruition. So voicesbyjoel.com.
All right. And guys, you can always reach us at Twitter at BTBehind. Or if you or someone you know is doing something interesting or you have a crazy interesting story you want to tell, go ahead and email us at btbehind@gmail.com. You can also find us Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Twitch, either streaming games or recording episodes of the podcast at about 6:30 p.m. Central Time. and that you can find that at goodgoodboy123. But until the next one, thank you guys for listening. Welcome. Welcome.
Behind the behind.
Welcome.
What's your story? Behind the behind.
You're a hero. Welcome. Where are we going?
Behind
Behind the what?
the behind.